Cuba is pushing back against communism, and a lot has transpired this week. It's been incredibly inspiring to watch, especially when you see people protesting and raising the American flag while shouting freedom. It's awesome. Mike Gonzalez is a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation and author of the book BLM, The Making of a New Marxist Revolution. It's out this September, and he's also a Cuban American, and he's here to give us the latest on Cuba's fight for freedom and also react to some of the administration's responses to press questions on all of this afternoon. Goodness, Mike, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while.
Dana, it's been a long time. I'm glad to be on. I actually have breaking news. I didn't know that there would be breaking news on this. It just a Spanish newspaper, ABC, is reporting that the Vice Minister of the Interior has resigned in Cuba, questioning the excessive use of force. His name, I'm going to look it up here. This just came out. I just read this a half hour ago. Jesus Manuel Buron Cabot. And the Spanish newspaper also reports that there is dissension among the ranks between the old guard and the new generals. And this is the only way this can go well for the Cubans. There is no other way. I saw this in the Philippines with Marcos, when Fidel Ramos decided to, a Marcos general decided to go against him in 1986. And that was because if the military decides to suppress the people, then the people will suffer. And there will be another 60 years of tyranny. But if the military says, no, we're not going to shoot on our people, then this is the only way. For the first time in 3 days, I tell you, since this started, I have a little bit of hope.
Wow, and that is huge. And these demonstrations are so incredibly significant because they're throughout the entire country. This isn't just in one area. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this seems, from what I understand, this exceeds even the early 90s when that's when after days of demonstrations, Castro was opening up borders and saying, okay, well, you can go if you want to. We knew that wasn't going to happen with this case, but tell people a little bit just how significant this is and how different these demonstrations are from any other kind of protest we've seen before.
Well, this is the first time in 62 years of communist rule over the island. This is truly historic. We hear the word historic thrown around all the time. A football game in which the quarterback has 5 touchdowns is called historic. This is truly historic. In 1994, a good memory, by the way, the demonstrations that did take place were limited to Havana, was limited to the Malecon, which is the seaside boulevard, very well known. And then there were demonstrations also in 1980. Both those times, the Castro dictatorship responded with flotillas of refugees. It sent out its discontented. This time it happened in dozens of cities, from one end of the country to the other. This time, people, they have a well-grounded fear. When you step out of line in Cuba, very bad things happen to you and happen to your family. So what happened, what these people did was very courageous. We should admire their courage. And I thought until a half hour ago, I saw no way this could end well. But if there's dissent among the troops, now that's just one newspaper report. But if it's true that there's dissent among the troops, then that's the only way the Cubans are going to have a fighting chance here.
Gosh, and it's amazing even to see something like that because we've never even, not even from one newspaper, we're talking with Mike Gonzalez here about the latest with Cuba's demonstration, citizens' demonstration for freedom. Mike, how does the United States help? Because there seems to, it seems that saying that you stand with the people who are protesting isn't enough. However, I do understand the concerns and agree with those who say, well, maybe we shouldn't go so far as the Miami mayor and say we should send troops in because, obviously that creates a very unstable situation in that part of the world. But where between those 2 points, how can the United States help, aside from maybe sending a ship right down there to the beginning boundary in the waters of Cuba so that we can establish a Wi-Fi signal if the Cuban government decides to turn it off and people can't get out information anymore? Where do you see the United States and how best being able to help the protest movement?
Well, actually, Dana, that's a very good idea, helping them with Wi-Fi. I think I think that a very strong denunciation of the Castro dictatorship, of communism, and of the very harsh, brutal reaction against the demonstrators that we have seen since Sunday night, in which average Cubans, men and women, are being dragged out of their houses, being beaten up. We're seeing this on social media. I think that goes a very long way. That's not just talking. We know from Natan Sharansky and the other Soviet refuseniks. Obviously, Natan Sharansky now is in Israel. He's an activist, but he talks about how when he was in the Gulag in the mid '80s, it came to him, because these things are always eventually known, that the president of the United States, a man named Ronald Reagan, had denounced the Soviet Union as the evil empire and has spoken on behalf of the dissidents. And that meant a lot to him. He said that nourished his soul. It affirmed that what he was doing is right. He was able to continue his sacrifice in the Gulag, knowing that there was a power overseas, the superpower of the United States, and a president who had taken the side of the victims of communism. So I think that we cannot discount what having Biden come out and give a very strong statement. They're very unlike what he's done. He has not really been strong. We can discuss why he has not been strong. But if Biden has at all an inner Ronald Reagan, and that's a very big if, I understand, but if he has an inner Ronald Reagan, now is the time to channel it. Now is the time for Biden to have a tear down this wall moment. This is an enormous opportunity for him if he's there to seize it. We obviously can surmise that, as with everything else, he's deathly afraid of the left flank of his own party, of the likes of Bernie Sanders or the squad of Black Lives Matter, and institutions of the left that have always embraced Cuban communism, and for that matter, the Congressional Black Caucus, which is really a very criminally supported the Castro dictatorship, which is, if you want to talk about white supremacy, that is white supremacy. Miguel Diaz-Canel is a blue-eyed white descendant of Spaniards. The vast majority of the people demonstrating are actually Black Cubans or mixed race Cubans, as we can see in the demonstrations. This is a very clear moment for Biden, for him to reach it. He would be sending a very strong signal. But then the most important thing, Dana, and I know you're going to agree with this, is for us to remain free ourselves. We cannot help anybody. We cannot help the Cubans. We cannot help anyone if we don't remain free ourselves.
I know your family came from Cuba, and I'm curious, you're hopeful. I think we're all hopeful, but at the same time, I mean, this obviously carries a significance for you. And watching the number of people in the street, and as you had cited, one of the Spanish language newspapers discussing how someone, military official, just a little earlier was saying that they resigning their position. They weren't going to take up against the citizenry. The potential here with a free Cuba. Talk about what that means to you.
Well, what it means to me is that the snakehead of evil in the Western Hemisphere will be removed. Once Cuba is free, Venezuela will become free, and Nicaragua will become free, and the free societies of Chile and Colombia and Ecuador will not be destabilized. Cuba is the fountainhead of evil in the Western Hemisphere. It has thwarted American attempts at establishing a zone of freedom and liberty in the Western Hemisphere. So this will not only mean that the 11 million Cubans will be able to have a chance at rejoicing in the blessings of liberty, but a lot of other people in the hemisphere will also be able to have a chance at leading normal lives.